Hello everyone and welcome to a game a lot of you have requested from round 4 of the TePe Sigeman and Company tournament 2025. It is Yagiz Kaan Erdogmus versus Richárd Rapport. Yagiz Kaan, I think we've covered only one of his games so far, but he is one of the highest promising talents in the world, if not the most promising one. He's still only 13 years old. He will be 14 in some 10 days. And he's having a great tournament. Rapport could be better. He lost in the previous round to the former Women's World Chess Championship challenger Tan Zhongyi. It was a pretty crazy game. She beat Rapport very nicely, and then she also defeated Vasil Ivanchuk, where Vasil lost on time in I believe it was a slightly better position. But okay, I mean, what are you gonna do? And it's really a wonderful game where Yagiz Kaan opts for a line that almost no one plays at the top level, but there are some instances. For example, Magnus played it against MBL, and there is a game I found in 2019 where Richárd defeated Gukesh in this particular line. So yeah, he definitely prepared it very nicely, and you know, found some untapped poison to you know, wield around. So let's check it out. Yagiz Kaan with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to c5. I believe Rapport needs no introduction. He's a super grandmaster. We've covered many of his games. He's a spectacular player. I mean, he plays with beautiful style. It is always a pleasure to watch him play. c5, we have knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. Yagiz Kaan goes for the Rossolimo, or the Nimzovich-Rossolimo attack. We have g6, castles, and bishop to g7. We have pawn to d3, d6, and now the immediate bishop captures on c6. This is the main line, and this is how it's played. B captures, and now there are many games in the database with this exact same position: knight c3, rook e1, pawn to h3. Those are all very popular moves, but pawn to e5, not really. You're basically trying to, black already has one set of doubled pawns. You wanna you wanna make him play d captures on e5 and have a second set of doubled pawns, which you can later on easily attack, and you will collect the material back. So not something that you want to do. So after e5, we have bishop to g4. Okay. Makes perfect sense. We have e captures on d6, e captures, and now again rook e1 and knight to b2 are known moves. Here we have pawn to h3, and it is now already as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. Okay, bishop captures on f3, we have queen captures, putting pressure on that c6 pawn, and Richárd replies knight to e7, nicely defends the pawn, and we have knight to c3. Seemingly not really threatening anything, but if Rapport you know, hurries up and castles kingside, you could very well lose this pawn. For example, bishop to g5 is just very annoying, and well, whatever you play, you know, even h6, you can just capture and pick up that c6 pawn. So it's not much, but you know, it's always better most of the time to be up a pawn than down a pawn. So after knight c3, Richárd says, yeah, okay, I'm not playing that, pawn to h6, and no bishop to g5. Now the position is, you know, perfectly fine for black. There is a reason no one plays this with white, and you can see both of them playing pretty much instantly. Not a lot of surprises here. We have bishop to f4, putting pressure on that d6 pawn. Also knight to e4 is coming, so we will be mounting even more pressure, but Richárd just castles. We have knight to e4, and now knight to f5 defending the pawn, and it seems like you can just kick away the defender, but this would be a pretty big mistake, because if knight to d4 attacks the queen and the c2 pawn, how do you defend? Queen d1, pawn to f5, and that's it. There's just no good reply here. You're going to open up the white king. You don't have c3 because once you capture, the bishop on f4 is also hanging, so it would be pretty bad. So after knight f5, c3, and here comes rook to b8. Again, Rapport playing instantly here, not thinking even for a second, going after the b2 pawn. He has more time than what he started with. We have rook 8 to b1 and rook to b5. He's very focused. He's ready to fight. He lost in the previous round, like I said, former Women's World Championship challenger Tan Zhongyi, and now he wants to take down Yagiz Kaan. we have queen back to d1 and pawn to d5. Rapport strikes in the center, and you know what we say, if you manage to execute d5 in the Sicilian without creating any weaknesses, you're either equal, but more often than not, you know, just because of the psychology behind the move, you are even better. And okay, Rapport had to burn some time here. He had to make sure that it was perfectly fine, and it is. But here we have pawn to a4. Okay. How much time was it used? Okay, 3 minutes for pawn to a4, but probably Yagiz Kaan considered it, you know, on other moves as well. We have rook to a5 and now knight to d2, and this is where it becomes very, very interesting. Look at this. We have rook to a6. Rapport tries to introduce the rook back into the game via the b file. Rook to e1. We have pawn to h5 and now bishop back to h2. Rook to e8 offering a rook trade, and now captures, and knight to b3. Going after the c5 pawn, bishop to f8 defending, maybe queen to e7 also an option, but now pawn to a5. And okay, how do you play this? The rook on a6 will have some problems getting into the game, and Rapport decided to tackle it immediately with pawn to c4. Now here, to play this position, which is objectively perfectly fine for black, you have to use a little bit of engine magic, so to say. And what I mean by this is that you have to play queen e7, queen b7, queen b5, and once you've done that, you will prepare pawn to c4, and then it's perfectly fine for black. But the way Richárd does it with pawn to c4, it's not losing or anything, but it allows Yagiz Kaan to make it very, very unpleasant. Look at this. D captures on c4, D captures on c4, and now queen to f1, preventing the capture as the rook on a6 will be hanging. So queen to e6, the queen defends the c4 pawn, and now rook to e1. Also rook to d1 with rook to d8, or even maybe, you know, some rook to d4, knight d4 can be played, but okay, rook to e1, he has a very, very particular idea. Queen to d5, and now rook to e8. We have pawn to c5, and the problem here is that, let's say you just unpin. Okay, let's say white doesn't have anything here. The problem is, you can go bishop to e5 check, just activating the bishop, or even just rook e5, and that black queen will have problems defending that c4 pawn. And probably you're thinking, but can we just go queen to d3? I mean, if white captures, we'll just undouble our pawns. Yes, you can, but then let's say knight c5, forks the queen and the rook, you force a queen trade, captures, and now after, let's say, bishop captures and rook captures, this rook will have a very, very hard time getting back into the game. You can't go here, you can't go here, and not a lot can be done here. White will improve his position as much as possible before capturing here. Then you will give black a chance to capture here, but then you will also capture here most likely, and white will just have a winning position. So that's the problem. That's why Richárd plays pawn to c5, and now rook to e5, attacking the queen and a double attack on the c5 pawn. Queen to d3, other moves don't really help you all that much, and now knight captures on c5. We have queen captures on f1, king captures, and rook captures on a5, but now knight d7, offering to go straight into the endgame. Rook captures on e5. You could also play rook to a1 check and then trade on e1, which would probably be a little bit better. But here, after rook captures on e5, bishop captures on e5 was played, and now pawn to h4. We have knight to f6 with check, and now with the bishop getting into the game, this is now a little bit problematic for Richárd. King to g7, knight to e4 with check. And it doesn't matter what you play. If you play king h6, you will just go after the c4 pawn, and once the c4 pawn is captured, you could even give up the bishop, you know, just to grab that pawn. Captures, and you're up a pawn. This is completely winning. You have the passed c pawn. This is elementary work for a 13-year-old Yagiz Kaan. So after 94, we have pawn to f6, and now bishop captures. This is how Richárd wants to play. He will activate the king via the f7 square. Bishop to g5, and now king to e6. Now, whether he can hold this being down a pawn, okay, I would say chances are better with 2 pieces on the board than with, or rather with 4 pieces than with 2 pieces on the board, but still very hard. Knight to d2, we have king to d5, and now knight to f3. We have king to c5, king to e2 getting the king into the game, and king to b5. We have king to d1, bishop to c5, getting the bishop into the game, putting pressure on f2, but just knight captures on h4. And now if you trade knights, then the bishop will also be defending the f2 pawn. So bishop captures on f2 by Richárd, and now knight captures on f5. G captures, and the passed h pawn has been created. You have the dark squares covered, so that means you only have to have h8 covered and you win the game. And he does. Pawn to h4. We have king to c6, pawn to h5, bishop to g3, trying to cover that h8 square in time, but it is impossible. h6, bishop to e5. You know, there are many ways that you can win this game, but, you know, just for fun, what would you play here? What is the most precise way to, you know, just show your opponent that you are completely dominating the position? Have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. The move in question, of course, is bishop to e3. This is what Yagiz played, and he was in this position on move 46 that Richárd Rapport resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The problem is you're gonna lose another pawn, and if you defend that pawn, let's say with king to a7 or pawn to a5, doesn't really matter, then bishop d4 takes care of the bishop, and you have control of the h8 square. Either you trade and then the king is not in time to capture the pawn, or you move the bishop all the same, h7, you queen the pawn and win the game easily. So to me at least, this was incredibly impressive, and even more so because here, okay, like I said, nothing special. This pawn to e5 move has been played. Gukesh fell victim to it, okay. But Rapport knew everything about it. He blitzed out everything, all of this. He blitzed out. Look at this. He's gaining time, not losing time. And here, this was the first moment, pawn to d5. And, okay, he spent some 15 minutes, but pawn to d5 is the strongest move, you know, recommended by the engine. So Rapport played what he knew perfectly. He found what he didn't know perfectly, invested time. Yagiz still outplayed him, and that is just amazing. Yagiz is currently leading the tournament with Javokir, and next opponent for Yagiz is the great Vasil Ivanchuk. So, you know, very much looking forward to that fight. We'll see what happens. I think Yagiz will have the black pieces against Vasil, so, you know, depends on what kind of a Vasil he gets. If he gets the engine Vasil, you know, everyone's done. If he gets, you know, Vasil who loses on time in a better position because he forgets to look at the clock, you know, yeah, it's he's definitely a wild card. And, you know, I don't mean a wild card what we usually mean by wild card, but Vasil is just a different wild card. He can just, you know, he's like a, you know, you unleash him like a tornado on a tournament, and, you know, no one is safe. So we'll see what Yagiz does. But yeah, brilliantly played by a super grandmaster, Richárd Rapport, definitely one of the best. And Yagiz, I mean, you know, the Turkish chess is looking incredible here. I think he's currently like the third highest rated, but he's climbing rapidly. So, you know, we'll see. I mean, at 13, 26, 18 is incredibly impressive. Very much looking forward to what he does next. Yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Samuel Kamuli, Nidhi Kumar, Markus Shib, Mariusz Klimek, and Zeni for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.